The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are an awakening center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, a learning experience for all ages. Tonight, our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, and I are pleased to present Holy of Holies Adeptus, first, second, third heaven. But before we begin, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. Islam, Grand Sheik.
Back to the work again.
We here. We in the house.
Yes. One of the things that we were talking about, one of the reasons that I want present to you to just do a synopsis of your thoughts on the Holy of Holies. Number one, because it's right up your alley. And number two, because there's so many angles that you can come from. And because of the way that you usually teach, you bring things down to a base level that the average person can relate to. And it's interesting, just like you were saying earlier, just a little while ago, one of the things that we're looking at is how can we help the people to handle, the heavy psychic attacks that are being put on the people today, because you already know most people lean on what they refer to as their religious beliefs to comfort themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, because of the dogmatic systems set up by the priesthood, it brings no cure. It more or less just keeps people going in circles. It's another reason why I was presenting, Holy of Holies, because it goes back to the base philosophies, ancient philosophies, without the dogma twist that was placed on them later. And so this is one of the reasons I brought that to your attention. And also I want to give a shout out to a brother who passed actually years ago, and Brother Aleem that on Trenton Avenue in Camden, where we used to hold classes for years. So I want to give shout out to him also, because when I did these lessons, and of course you already know this, this is taken from the 2002 Al-Moroccan Star newspaper, a derivative from Monad Master, Holy of Holies. And we're just going to skim over it a little bit, because I'm sure that you can present much to the people that's workable philosophy without the jargon. And so that's why I'm leaning on you to do your thing.
You're leaning on me to
do your thing.
Well, this is your subject matter. But I certainly, always am able to have a conversation with you. And a lot of times when I'm having a conversation, it's because I need somebody to bounce off something that might be a little deep with, and I know how deep you are. So if you grasp it and don't tell me that I'm off kilter, if you will, and then we can have a discussion. Mm-hmm. We can look up, and what would have been a few minutes now is an hour or two, and we got to stop and say, okay, maybe we should talk about this.
Yeah.
And maybe this is something that is coming up. And a lot of times I believe the universe brings us things that are universally being
for the time,
being
for the
considered.
space,
Yeah,
for the cycle,
yeah, something like that. So
for the placement.
I feel like you're more of an adeptus, if you will, when, as you say, with this, and you've written way back in, was it 2002?
Yes, from the Al-Moroccan
Yeah,
newspaper.
in the Al-Moroccan Star. Anybody who still has this, back then, you have a very extensive article on the subject matter of the Holy of Holies. When we think of the Holy of Holies, in terms of how it's been taught traditionally.
Yeah, dogmatically.
Dogmatically, it's been taught as a realm or a place that was created for you to go to get closer, if you will, to God. And and while I'm saying this, and man made it by the allegedly by the instructions or the script, whatever was given, the plans that were given, to Moses, who gave them to Aaron, and then they constructed the Holy of Holies. But from a metaphysical standpoint, I've come, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, to see the Holy of Holies as an innermost place in me.
Because that's what it is. Okay. That's exactly what it is outside of the dogma.
Okay.
And again, one of the reasons why when we were talking earlier, and I brought this up, and we're still dealing with countering the dogmatic or psychic attacks that are being put on humanity as a whole heavily right now, whether social, politically, and economically. All of those areas, humanity is being attacked.
Okay.
Now, while a lot of people don't look at it that way, because mentally they've been told by the priesthood that these are separate issues, rather than being dimensional connections.
Okay.
In other words, just like the facets of a jewel, of a stone, there's still that one stone, but there are different angles to it.
Right.
And one of the keys that the priesthood, the dark priesthood, when I say the dark priesthood, that means those who have corrupted the philosophies and thus corrupted religion for the purpose of subduing humanity, not for uplifting humanity. However, because of the training, humanity usually leans to the dogmatic surface concepts that have been promoted for centuries. And then the real Kabbalistic principles have been kept by the priesthood that keeps them in power. And this is, again, on another angle, why they have maintained secret societies where they keep the fundamental truths for themselves, then they flower them up and twist them and then present them to the masses as, quote unquote, the truth. And thus keep the masses under the control, because they always use the mystery terms, God, not gods, God, without telling the issue of the real Kabbalistic history. It's really plural. Now, I'm just as an example. And so even when we're saying God or searching for God, when it's coming from the priesthood and they say it that way, it seems innocent, but they've already contaminated, because the God is always plural. And the dynamics of humanity has been trying to find in their concepts, has been presented the single God. Right. Because it made it safe for the priesthood to control them.
Absolutely.
That way they could hide the real history of humanity, that actually they're different entities and different beings and different civilizations at different times, that different civilizations called God.
Right.
And in order to protect the priesthood's corruption, they promoted monotheism without explanation. And thus the Holy of Holies, from an Adeptus position, is removing the dogmatic position and simply going back to what you call back to basics. And, just like you mentioned earlier, as we were talking, how even when people are, when the philosophers are even teaching metaphysical angles with the promise or with the intent that they're actually going back to the basics, because it became a monetary platform, they make that complicated too. You know, like, you know, you read it and you've got to do mental math, hoops and jumps and tumble salts to try to figure it out, when the truth of the matter is very simple. You know, when in its real truth of the workings of nature, the workings of the mind, the developments of the self, and then the allegorical stories in the original form they were explained.
Absolutely.
You know, just like the anthropomorphic angles were explained, and over the centuries, because of the corruption of the priesthood and them even competing with each other for power, the dogma has creeped in, and thus has actually divided humanity. Even when you study the quote unquote so-called different religions, when you start studying them, they all lead back to a root, a common root. And then for the protection of the priesthood, they will take that and scatter it again in order to protect their little fiefdoms and their financial and service-oriented clubisms, which in itself corrupts the whole platform. And of course, because masses have been groomed, all of us have been groomed under that. Unless one really studies, one is mostly influenced by what we call the dogmata. But as a presentment for the moment, because as you already know, the social paradigm of humanity evolving the priesthood through their political platform, because it must be understood that the political platform is part of the priesthood.
Absolutely.
And the masses don't know that as a rule. Are we clear? You know that.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, because we know that they're accelerating their psychic attacks on the people, because they're crashing the economic system, which actually deals with people's right of self-thought, what they might call free speech, right of self-thought, right of self-expression, in order to put us back into a mental cage that they can control. And they're losing that grip because of the dynamics that's taking place in the cosmos and reflecting on the physical plane. They're accelerating their activities of trying to put humanity back into the mental box. And thus the Holy of Holies is our lesson for tonight, synoptically.
Yeah, a place to go. And I know a lot of times, when we come on here, folks always would probably expect or hope that they would get something that would help them with their right now situations, or
Yes.
particularly, just like, the sister that called just before we got on,
Yes.
from down under,
from Australia.
Yes, from Australia, our sister. And people have immediate needs,
and that's all over.
Yeah, but
Yes.
we also recognize that there are things that if we are spiritually weak,
grounded, you can deal with it.
Not spiritually grounded, but if we're spiritually weak, we're unable to do what needs to be done to even deal with those right now situations. And that's the thing.
Right on. Keep on going.
Yeah.
You're right on time.
So a lot of times, so make no apology if our subject matter is not, how to, reverse a foreclosure or something. Sometimes it has to be the inner work.
Yes.
Of your own spiritual, so to speak, fortitude and strengthening and rooting and grounding. That
Another
has
reason
to take,
why the subject for, because even if you give someone, like, say for instance, like that as an example, right? Mm-hmm. That's automatically an adverse claim. Mm-hmm. People, as an example, people are commonly hearing the word foreclosure, debt, foreclosure, mm-hmm. but very few hear adverse claim. Yet they go together like this whenever that subject matter of estate claim comes up.
Right.
And the interesting thing, just like most people aren't familiar with adverse claim, right, is part of the same dogmatic system that the priesthood has used, dogmatic religion, to keep people in that state of mind, and then keep people thinking that their economic and social position in the physical realm has nothing to do with what they assume to be spiritual, and it's connected.
I'm reading a book, and I shout out to, and I do apologize because I didn't get the brother's name, but Brother Yarad introduced me to a brother on a three-way. And in the midst of the conversation, it's about a couple weeks ago, and in the midst of the conversation, the brother was telling me about a book that he was reading called The Secret History of the Jesuits. And so I thought, I'm going to get it. So right while we were still on the phone, I ordered that particular book and have been reading it to the extent that, like we're saying, a lot of times people don't see the connection between the so-called religious realm, the political realm, the economic realm, and all that. But right in their doctrines, you can see in the very beginning of this book, and that is what was it Ignatius Loyola,
their goal
when they
of conquest is all about.
The conquest was about, so you had to take every aspect of our reality and infiltrate it.
Thank you.
You can't just, it's not just the spirit, so-called religious side of it.
Yeah,
it's
this whole
every
idea.
It's every, like, so the media,
everything,
even the medical, the healing, everything is intertwined, because once you control every aspect of someone's life, then it doesn't matter. I mean, you can twist and turn people any way you want, because if you can't get them with this, then you've got that,
because it's the life cycle.
And what they've done is trained people through their universities and their colleges and their higher learning and their secret societies. They've trained people to infiltrate every aspect of society. So you've got the politicians, you've got the heads of corporations and various say institutes and so forth. Everything is connected so that there is an unbroken chain or link, if you will, that everything is inextricably attached, or when I say connected.
You're correct.
Even though we are connected, because we realize, because that brings me to another thought, but it's just that when you realize that this thing that a lot of people have depended on. I was at my last uncle's funeral homegoing today. And it was interesting. They wanted me to get up they offered me to get up in the pulpit. No, I was I read the obituary, but I don't see myself in that light anymore.
Yes.
But to sit there and then to hear the message of if you want to see him again, this, that, and that. It took me to the dogma, because we realized that, or I do, that we, to drop this robe, if you will, of flesh, is to go into life, to full life, into reality. And so I couldn't cry for that. You know what I mean? It changed my mind. But here we had the fear game being given or peddled to the people, because it's an opportune time. But what I'm trying to say is, when we get into who's behind what it is we've been getting, and what is and is the agenda of domination, control, of subjugation, of these things. When you read it in their own words,
you'll see that the structures of the institutions that we're dealing with today are not what people think they are. And the other thing is that you recognize why so much effort was put into the social structure by the priesthood of, quote unquote, separation of church and state, why that was promoted in order to maintain an idea that these things were separate, when in fact they never were, never will be. They're all intertwined. It's part of the yarn of God. And this is back to what you just identified in your analysis or your logistical breakdown, is God, government, ordinance, departments, and so when they've been saying, in God we trust, they're not lying. However, they are deceiving, because the God is not what people think it is.
Absolutely.
And this is back to why, even when you look at the political operations and you see mainly hybrid Europeans in their greater lodges refer to themselves as God. Once they get past certain degrees, they refer to themselves as God, and they act like God. Not unlike what's described in the Bible in Septuaginta, in Thessalonians 1 and 2. So taking it out of the dogma form, but taking it back into the reality of the social political orders, this is where God in government ordinance department in its real function is, and when you're dealing with Loyola, etc.
Yeah.
And why you see all your major political universities, when you trace them back, you'll find that they're all connected to the Jesuits.
And
the bankers and
everything. But when you begin to read, they would infiltrate countries and kings. They would get kings and princes under their so-called religious tutelage, and then begin to indoctrinate, families and leaders. They wanted leaders to be indoctrinated.
They're
so that
planned,
right.
And this is back to once you even understand the politics. If you get people out of their emotions,
right,
and just start looking at even researchable stuff, you find that the masses, even in the psychosis of them voting for this person, that person, supporting this party, that party, that keeps them busy, but none of what the common people think power they have has any influence other than the satisfaction of those who are ruling them, except that these people are sedated to whatever cause they're moving them to. But the illusion that these people, with their attachment to their so-called religious and political orders, are given an idea that they're empowered, when in fact they're not. They're actually in servitude.
Yeah. So you talk about in here about the monad and the Holy of Holies. Do you want me to read a little bit of this?
Yes, go ahead.
And this is something that Sheik wrote, or he published, like I said early in the beginning, that 2002. This
but
came out
earlier. It's an earlier lesson, but
it was published during the summer solstice of 2002. Yeah. The Holy of Holies, first, second, third heaven. It's from his heritage lesson number 11. The Holy of Holies is an humble and unpretentious Moorish heritage and culture lesson involving varied subjects and issues relative to the divine given birthrights of man. Its focus is most directed toward some issues concerning thinking, free thought, mental liberation, and the natural workings of the mind. This work is an expansion of a 4 paragraph lesson, which was taught in the early 1940s, plus by C.M. Bey, PhD, LLD, Master Astrologer, and Moorish Constitution lawgiver. Key parts of this information was presented to students of Moorish philosophies for ages, and waived within the context of most general Moorish science culture classes. The core of this knowledge is common for all scholars of the Order of the Great Seal, PhDs, stars, imams, the rabbinate, high priests, seers, psychics, I don't know what that
amanuensis masters,
amanuensis net masters, etc. Do not confuse this knowledge with the commonly held biased exercised by those playing games of competing religions. It is not of them. Being universal in its nature, this valuable bit of information is being reinstituted and shared with the Moorish nation of North America and humanity at large. There is no body, individual or collective, who or which can exist in any form of freedom, nor in the free state wherein there dwells an ignorant and enslaved mind. Thus, his crude treatise is presented to the Moorish nation of North America, the North Gate, of which I am part and parcel. I trust it will serve my nation well, these in quotes, in some small degree, and assist in ongoing work in progress of helping uplift fallen humanity. A natural truth in need of exposure to all dwelling on the terrestrial plane is that the ancient knowledge and nature of the human life cycle and culture and the all-embracing and timeless universal lessons of evolution and progress are the birthright of every woman, man, and child. Evolution and progress apply to the human genus and all else. As an intro to give you all a background on where this has come from. But I also picked up and asked you to reach back there because it's funny how whenever we get to talking about something, I was like, let me reach back here and pick one of these
That's what I was saying earlier. All I do is give you started.
And there's probably something on the shelf that is going to help or to address this. And I have actually a four volume set of books that I purchased some years ago. These are old, Grassy. Look, this book was $1.95. So that you know how volume 1, $1.95, and
can't even get the paper for that now.
Yeah, this book was this came out, and this one came out in 1967, 63,
yeah, printed in
1963, something like that. But anyway, so $1.95. Then the next year it was $2.95, and then this one was volume 3 was $2.75, and I think this was the most expensive one. This one we're doing, and it's called The Hidden Wisdom in the Holy Bible, and this particular one is volume 4, because I pulled, I opened it right up to where they were talking about a monad. So let me give a definition of the monad before we say what that is, because you've talked about monad masters and all that. And I remember, one time over at House of Real Awakening Mind some years ago when you taught about creating, when we come together, we create spirits or babies, if you will, even if they're in the spirit realm.
Yes.
And a lot of times, people think because when you come together in that intimacy, there's almost always a birthing, not always physical in nature or manifestation, but something gets birthed when
that's why it's important to understand the real workings, and also why the Ankh, and people look at the Ankh as being political, because that deals with rulership. The Ankh, but you already know, the Ankh, also referred to as the sistrum, is really a geometric structure that represents the uterus, the fallopian tubes, and the birth canal, which is your first holy cross. So you've got to know that that's what the cross is, and not something to be worshipped the way that the priesthood did later with their ritual of murdering justice, symbolized as a sacrificing of Jesus. That means the murdering of justice. All right. So basically, comprehending in the ancient ones in the philosophy, or the proper use of the womb, or the power of the womb and the state of mind of woman. This is where you have the applied science of the number 9. And of course, that's included too, but that's just a part of the cycle of understanding monad master. So the state of mind, just like you just said, is very important for woman's state of mind while she's building. That's why she's referred to as the master builder. And you see the allegorical stories that with the workings of the womb, she builds the soul of man's temple without the sound of a hammer or the rasping of a saw, is because she's building the temple of man, which is the physical body.
You remember I created, I don't know if I still have it up here, but I may have gotten rid of it. Darn it. I think I took it down. I was going to, you remember I had the picture of that, exactly what you're talking about. Oh, here it is. This was something that I created. So I put this picture, and it says
the Grand Architect.
The Grand Architect creates in secret silence a temple fashioned neither by hand nor tool, yet tailor-made for each of us. So in reality, I was talking about, we'll deal with something about homeless.
Look at that. Now let's look at this allegorical.
Okay.
So now you see the arc, the arc, and also the crescent moon of the covenant, and the Grand Architect, or the master builder. So all of these terms that you see that they use in secret societies is really dealing with the matriarchy.
Yeah, see, and I just found pictures of
that's working in nature,
and even that gave me, it made me think in terms of the solar system,
all
and
of it. And don't they call it the solar plexus?
Well, yeah.
You see?
Yeah. So
And
this is
isn't that the Naveville? Isn't that the birthmark?
yes.
You know, so to create stories, they would do allegories and they would do anthropomorphic. But when it all boils down, it's really there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, even when they'll use allegorical terms or stories about the virgin birth type thing.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't exactly mean what the way to people, unless they study ancient Saba culture, from which all of this origin has its origin. They will usually come into the dogmatic presentment that the priesthood has, and that's why they always put themselves as the middleman, and they extract from the people rather than tell them the real truth. Because if they told the real truth, they wouldn't be needed. And once you tell the people the fundamental truths, everybody's equal.
Absolutely.
If you get the point.
Yeah. But here, so monad, alone, the divine spirit in man, the dweller in the innermost, like the holy of holies, the innermost,
called the divine
which
spark,
is said to evolve through the subhuman kingdoms of nature into the human and thence to the stature of the adept, beyond which extend unlimited evolutionary heights. The description of the destiny of man given by the Lord Christ supports this concept, for he said, be ye, or you shall be, what does it say? You shall be therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. So
now see that throne, now that's the pineal gland, and then the monad or that spark sits up in here. That's called the throne. You see, now that's simple. So these stories are given, and so people look at the physical thrones, but the Kabbalists know that it's really talking about the pineal gland.
So there's also one more term, monad ego.
Yes.
A dual term used in this work to connote the individualized manifestation of the human monad as triple spirit, the higher triad in a vestiture of light or a robe of glory, what they call it is really a vestiture of light, the causal body, the divine spark or dweller in the innermost monad, which is the course of evolution, which in the course of evolution has attained to self-conscious individuality as man or ego, and during life on earth is embodied in vehicles of mind, emotion, and flesh.
And see, and that spark or that monad with that spark of life cannot be expunged. That's why they say there is no death to man. You know, so even when you see the different terms that they make, when they say man is a spirit having a human experience, you know, simply, he's monad. See, but if they just say it like that without the jargon, now these are ways of explaining it to children, if you get the point, or giving them something to look at. But really, it's an expression of simply the human life cycle and the nature of the being of the monad, which is hominidae. And so hominidae is when it comes into the physical form. And then, of course, you've got your philosophies that go along with it, with the Pythagorean temples. And this is where women who had a higher state of mind could actually meditate and activate the eggs without the sperm. And this is where you call the virgin birth. But this was done with women who are really in a very high adeptus state of mind. But the Pythagorean temples is not alien to us. That's part of our culture. You know what I mean? But if they teach that, then also the priesthood would not have been able to institute the psychosis of conquest of the womb, thus the conquest of nations, if they told women the truth of their power.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and so we're simply talking monad master, and we're removing the dogma concepts and understand that these fundamental principles are known by all the priesthood around the world. However, if they were really taught to the general masses, the priesthood would die because it becomes useless.
Yeah.
No different than, you know, and of course, if they're being honest, they don't look to steal the widow's pennies. They look to uplift fallen humanity. And this is back to even the story of Yeshua, where he the priesthood, and he knows the same Essene lessons, and yet the conflict between Yeshua, who they renamed in the books as Jesus, had with the priesthood is that the priesthood use the knowledge to enslave humanity, or to steal from them, or to live off of them, or to make them worship them in the name of God. And Yeshua, who they rename as Jesus, was telling them, don't steal the widow's pennies, tell the truth. And so it's not that they didn't know the things that Yeshua or Jesus knew, is that they couldn't make a living and enslave the people. And this is why they looked at him as a threat, politically and spiritual. It's not that they didn't understand. You know, like a lot of times the priests said, well, they didn't understand what Jesus was really. Yes, they did. You know what I mean? And so that interferes with the whole game from what? From Caesar right on down. So Caesar represents the Roman rulers, sometimes referred to as Babylon, you know, as a symbol, right? And so that pulls all of their game down. And this is why none of the priesthood, so-called, like Jesus, nor also why they betrayed him. They didn't betray him because they lacked of understanding. It's because he was what? A political threat. Political threat.
Yeah. So
So they delivered him to what? And so what Pontius Pilate said, because remember, all the priesthood know divine law, right?
Right.
So what he says, because he's dealing with what we call karma. Right? Cause and effect. He said, y'all want to do this? You know, he's a good man. He ain't done. But if y'all want to,
it's on you.
It's on you. But yet he was glad to deliver him. But that way he removed himself from what? The karmic. Why? Because nature, or what's called divine law, don't recognize person or station. So even when people are operating on the dark side, they know that divine law doesn't bend. And they're all subject to it. This is again why all your rulers belong to secret societies. What do they learn? They learn the ancient Saba or Sabian culture, from which all of the philosophies have derived. And so they will refer on loosely, they will call it ancient Egyptian Adeptus orders. You know, or they'll say, and then all of your, even though we know that Egypt is a short term for he cooked up. But the deal of it is what they're talking about is civilization foundation. And so they keep the knowledge for themselves, then they piece it up and dress it up and flower it up, and then remove certain aspects so that humanity is locked into a time cycle that they create, you know, like the 6,000 year cycle type thing, crap. Mm-hmm. And then they create their different versions. That's why they say versions, etc. Still coming from a fundamental root, but don't tell people the fundamental root. And this is back to your interjections. So back to the work that you always do really good. So interject.
No, I again, I'm going back to the fact that, you know, like I said, a lot of folks want specifics when they hear some generalities, some general knowledge that we have not. I'm not even going to say not been privy to, but it hasn't been readily given. But it's out there. It's accessible.
It's always been there.
It's always been there, but it's not something that
people have been deliberately turned or
away.
bent.
Yeah.
By the priesthood, and because they're priests, the people have trusted them. See, this is the key. And this is again, Dr. G, where a lot of people get confused when they start learning the ancient human condition, and they start saying, well, the preachers are going bad, or it used to be good and now they're going. No, it's not, and never was that. The deal of it is they corrupted it from the beginning, and that's where you deal with the different prophets or seers who refer to them as the illusions of the world, because they have pretty much molded the way that the culture on Midgard would go. And so the masses at large have been subjected to actually a delusionary and illusionary living standard created by the priesthood, who step back and look like they're the ones who are offering solution when they created the negative. But the people are not to know that the politicians are part of the priesthood, and that's just simply a position in the bishopric. And this is where a lot of people really don't understand. Once they understand that your different positions of rulership are part of the priesthood, then it's easier to look at the cause and effect of political structures and motivations. And of course, this is why it has always been firmly promoted by the priesthood all over the place. Separation of church and state. That's a interjection, a social interjection that was not true, is not true, never was true. Now, once you get past the ego, because remember, this is why they always feed people their attach their so-called beliefs that they have adopted to the ego, so that the ego would reject reasoning and also would reject evidence that shows the contrived concepts that, when you go back to the ancient text, is always contradictory. And so, because it cannot be reconciled, the people were promoted to just accept the word to the club that they are and dismiss everything else. Because immediately when you start doing the research, you immediately run into contradiction. And so, rather than, because it can't be reconciled, and so they just dismiss it. You know how they say, don't question the word?
Mm-hmm.
What they really mean is don't question the priesthood.
Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as the people are docile and in a state of belief, and of course, we see in belief, we see lie, lie. As long as people remain in the state of and deal with belief systems, then they're able to be manipulated and controlled
by the priesthood,
right?
Because in other words, that's their tool. Once the people understand that that's a tool, and are brave enough to get past their ego that has been cultivated by the priesthood and start seeing things for what they really are, then Mother Nature just simply exposes everything. It's really because then you go to what is called common law, which is common sense. Because common sense actually uncovers everything. Because the defense is in the nature. When your mom brought you to the earth, she already gave you your tools. This is again why it's been so important from the priesthood to control women. You notice how women make all these institutions work? Main ones, right? And then they focus on doing what? Actually subjugating her while she makes all the systems work. Once you understand that, it's because they want to control the womb. Because you control the womb, you can control the offspring of the womb. This is why even when you understand the political structures, you understand the Christian black codes where they through the code system, right? It says what? The condition of the child is the condition of the mother. It's like Christian black codes, what? Article 5 and 6. Now that's political, but people don't understand that comes from the priesthood. Even when they talk about the condition of the child in the codes, right? The Christian black codes, right? It says what? The church and the state determines the condition of the child. And the hospice, the hospital. But once you see these things and you start studying the ancient culture, you can see where the priesthood has corrupted everything. Then they're not so innocent, are they? And they're not so holy, are they? This is why once people really start studying for themselves, they usually leave organized religion because they recognize that the priesthood has corrupted it. Doesn't mean that that person is atheistic or not moral. It means that once they start thinking for themselves, the institutions can't serve them because they recognize that they've been corrupted, all of them. And it's hard for people sometimes to accept that because we've all been a part of most of other different orders. And this is also why, as people study and evolve, why they get frustrated and you start seeing them run from one order to another on this endless search. And then some, because they get tired of running, they find some place to settle down and they ain't satisfied, but they, because they can't reconcile their position. But they're promoted to think that if they stop, then they're abandoning God, if you get the point. But that's psychosis when they're really saying you're abandoning the club. And thus you're getting the priesthood's hand out your pocket because you already know if people wake up, Rome don't get their 10% tax called tithe. But continue.
Well, in here, in the hidden wisdom of the Bible, there's what you just mentioned prior to your last discourse when you were talking about Pilate and so forth. And it talks about Pontius Pilate, Exodus 7:23. It said, then Pharaoh turned and went into his house. Neither did he set his heart to this also. And you, of course, contextually, you want to know what was this, but we're not going to go there. But this particular Pharaoh of Egypt, whom it is sought erroneously to identify, it says Ramses, he being an allegorical rather than a historical. See, that's a lot of times we think stuff is historical when we read the Bible. They're saying he being allegorical, rather than a historical figure, is one of many prototypes of Pilate, who in his turn would not set the Savior and Redeemer free. That was the Pharaoh that wouldn't let the people go.
Exactly.
Same thing. Okay, Pilate representing the materialistic and egoistic mind, because we're talking pander to the multitude. Yes. He did this against both his better judgment based on legal evidence and his intuition, represented by the message from his wife, describing his wife had a vision and told him, don't, you need to do thus and so. It's not going to end well if you don't. But he did, having committed his crime of responding to the lower instead of the higher. We talk about the self, higher, lower self.
There you go.
Okay. Pilate began to be conscience stricken, but like Pharaoh, he hardened his heart, as in partly symbolized by the washing of hands, right? Partly symbolized by
symbolic. Just like people go through the symbolic baptism.
Yeah,
it's the ritual, but not
the actual
internal.
heart.
Like you were saying earlier,
right?
It's really in,
right?
And so this becomes a facade,
right?
All right.
So it says in this verse, Pharaoh, rather, because we're talking about Pharaoh, Pilate, same archetype.
Yes.
Is made up to be uneasy. His heart, meaning his higher self, as well as his natural inclinations, did not support him in his course of conduct. And we always.
So that means justice is in you're born with it. And what was it saying? The human structure by nature knows right from wrong.
Right.
No club can teach it to you.
You don't need to be told.
Exactly, because it's structured in you. We'll continue.
So his heart, meaning his higher self, as well as his natural inclinations, did not support him in his course of conduct, which his higher reason and better nature told him was wrong. Like you just said, it's already in there. In these allegories, the psychological conflicts in man, the play of opposing forces and motives, the upward pull of the spiritual and the resistance to it of that which is material in him, are all skillfully portrayed. The whole drama with its actors is played out within a single individual, one moreover in whom awakening has occurred. And a lot of us are in these various states of awakening. So we do have these struggles from that stirring and growth of the same nature in man. There comes through successive lives, reincarnation. We don't just die and be gone. We come back. Y'all know. A steadily increasing dissatisfaction. There comes a steadily increasing dissatisfaction. What did I say? with the former mode of life and a deepening determination to have done therewith. We don't want to do this anymore. How many people say that? I remember when Sister Zodiacus, before she transitioned, said to me, I'm not coming back anymore. I've done this, I've done that, I've been this. She started telling me all of these beings that she had been, and she was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And we know at the age of 41, she transitioned this time. But she told me, I mean, to my face, she gave me a list of who she'd been, and all of it wasn't pretty. And she said, I'm not coming back anymore. So that was like coming to this type of, realization, right? From that stirring and growth of the same nature in man, there comes through successive lives a steadily increasing dissatisfaction with the former mode of life and a deepening determination to have done therewith. This phase is chosen by the great allegorist for portrayal because it is intensely dramatic in itself and also extremely critical. The individual's future, and therefore to be a considerable extent the future of the race, depends upon the result. Whilst ultimate victory for spirit is utterly certain, both the period at which it is achieved and the costs are determined by decisions taken during this critical period when the summons of the higher self makes itself heard and felt by the outer man.
Yeah, and it right in harmony with that. This is like even when you keep it simple, just like when you read Circle 7 Koran, right, as an example, chapter 1. Also, when you read Elihu's lessons, etc., that gives you a synopsis of really the ancient, original Kabbalistic instruction, absent of the dogma that the priesthood has put on the lessons. That's what makes another reason why the Circle 7 Quran is so valuable. Why they say it's a small pamphlet, but once you really do research, you will recognize how much information is packed in that small pamphlet.
Absolutely. It's interesting, like I said. So when you start to see that there is a structure to this, there is a pattern that is already set, or what we call archetypes.
That's really there.
There's archetypical types that we fall into. Like I don't know how many archetypes there are, but everybody can be fitted, or if you will, into one or
because what the philosophies of the human life cycle have been registered thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, that come down to what you would call the cycles of illumination, or the knowledge of self. And why, when any philosopher anywhere on the planet, from any society that starts doing any real study on the human experience, they essentially end back in what they call Egypt as their last prototype that they can see, or that's preserved. And then what you discover when you study that, you find that what the ancient Egypt philosophies present is that the information is far ancient beyond themselves, from time immemorial. And when they're making reference to Egypt in the books, you start recognizing, once you do the research, they're talking about the planet at large, not just on the side of the East. That the people take it today, they're talking about the whole planet. And also, Egypt is also used as a term concerning the actual physical body. And the different cities are different parts of the body, not unlike the chakras and the glandular systems. So when you study the ancient philosophies, you understand allegorical that is applied both ways, both political, physical, metaphysically, and spiritual, and the art of economics, or what they call ways of life. And of course, the philosophies give you what you call the fixed, or what they call the maximum foundations of knowledge on how to live. And of course, as we already know, the priesthood has kept most of that knowledge for themselves in chambers and have used the fact of keeping it from the masses uh, as a weapon to actually enslave humanity. And this is why, they're deemed as being so corrupt, because they actually represent themselves as being peacemakers, and they're actually peace breakers. They present themselves as spiritual developers when they're actually spiritual retarders. And this is what has come to the and so when you see the allegorical story of Yeshua, or Jesus, as the Savior, which simply means as the pineal gland wakes up, or the Christ degree, that they can no longer deceive the world. And so even with the psychic attacks that they're putting on humanity in these days, is because they see that humanity is evolving, and that threatens the whole world. Why? Because the whole world's built on an illusion or a fraud, or it is all fiat, blind faith. And the people have been blind, not because the people were blind by nature, because they've been blinded by the priesthood. Means it was an artificial blindness. It wasn't the nature of just human development. Is actually blinded by the priesthood themselves. And so the priesthood, who has been pretending to be oracles of light, have actually been oracles of suppressing light, and thus priests of darkness. Don't mean they don't know the truth, and don't mean they didn't know the truth. It means that the truth kills all the institutions. And a lot of things that are taking place today, just like we look at the economic system, mostly that's hitting mostly the people, what's hitting them now in their mind and in their actual experience is the economics, right? And the threat of the illusion and delusion of the promise of security in their economic structure, which was never really secure, never intended to be. However, the psychology has been the people's attachment to what they refer to as, quote unquote, the monetary system represented future security for themselves as they aged, when in fact never did and was never intended to. However, because of the training, the people, in trying to hold on to that illusion, are actually feeding the priesthood that actually controls the illusion. Even right now, as we talked about before, how when the reality of them stealing the gold and the silver, or the treasures of Egypt, and the people found that out, now they've been selling them an illusion of what? Digital, which is total abstract, which means the physical don't even work anymore. And so they're now dealing with the abstract, and they're pushing it hard. Why? Because it all represents their power structure, and their controlling of the monetary system is actually the root of all the evils on the planet. It is not the money itself, because the people ain't allowed to have money, but there's the illusion of people's quest for the money that kept them under the control. And as the people are evolving and waking up to that, the rest of the institutions that were structured to maintain the priesthood power become useless. It's not unlike, how it's like when cars became popular, right? People forgot. Some of us who are older remember when they had horse and wagons and stuff like that, bringing ice around, and they had ice boxes.
Yeah, and they had the tongues, the big old.
Because I remember when I was about two. When I was two, and I used to run to the door with Mom, and they had this fork like type thing.
Yeah, like that.
And they get a block of ice, and they bring it in and put it in the bottom of the refrigerator and stuff.
That's what they used to call the ice box.
Yeah, ice box.
When the refrigerator was called the ice box.
And to show you how fast things have changed, if you get the whole point. But yet many of the younger people now, who are even adults, never seen one. And yes, that's a matter of decades back, if you get the point. Now, and so like when that becomes useless now, so the horses, so any jobs that deal with saddle soap, right? The leathers that they rub on the harnesses for the horses, or the saddles. So those jobs went by the wayside.
Right.
Right. And then the other ice houses went by the wayside.
So
right?
a lot of things have gone by the wayside that
So it is
some
for
don't
now.
even know about ever existed. Like you're
Exactly.
saying. And so this thing that we're going through is a cycle.
Exactly.
It's cyclical. It's happened before, it'll happen again.
And so the point that I'm making is the institutions that were constructed to maintain the dogma system in order to keep the priesthood as in power are dying. And the people being attached to these different systems, which are actually what you call supply support tributary systems, become unnecessary for the priesthood. And as they're dissolving them, because they've tied the people to them, the people are kind of threatened. Oh, they're going to lose their job. When actually a lot of these things that are looked at as negative is actually part of the purging that's actually liberating us. It's also that we don't necessarily recognize it. And so we're threatened by it. Oh, the banks are closing. Good, but bad. But we're actually being liberated.
Or maybe say it bad but good.
Yeah, bad but good.
Right.
You know, and so another reason why it's important for people to understand the Adeptus principles of Monad Master is so that they can mentally start doing what? Clearing their mind of the dirt, of the misconcepts, and that some things that are being dismantled are not bad for us. It's going to hurt us, not unlike a drug addict, but you got to let it go. The illusions of the world,
Yeah,
and by the people not knowing any other thing, the people are threatened with the dissolution of institutions because they thought the institutions were good for them, when actually they're being dissolved. But yet for the priesthood is necessary for these institutions because it's part of what kept us mentally enslaved.
Yeah.
At the same time, they're no longer useful to them. No different than, you know, if you ain't riding a bike no more, you don't keep them bicycles. You got that bicycle down in the basement or something like that, right?
I got rid of it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, and beautiful bike, had more dust than it had metal, if you get the point. But yet it's a beautiful bike, right? Same thing, is no longer useful.
Yeah.
And so the dogma systems and the economic systems that are supported by the priesthood are no longer useful. But go ahead, Dr. J. Interject.
I wanted to make sure and see where we are, that we do get into the what you had written with regard to the first, the second, and the third heaven. I don't want to not.
Yes.
I want to not speak with that. But real quick before I get there, I just want to do this last thing. What I was reading, Pharaoh delayed, as did Pilate, concerning the crucifixion of Christ. Both it says temporized. Pharaoh, however, like St. Peter, ultimately relented, but Pilate remained adamant, and the great crime occurred of the murder of an aspect of the higher self. Remember, we're looking at this allegorical and not, literal. In this verse, early in the story of the conflict, Pharaoh's uneasiness is described, whilst the temple symbolizes the whole man, including the ego in the causal body, and the monad or dweller in the innermost, the holy of holies, and the deity enshrined therein. A house with its four walls represents the outer self of mind, emotion, vital energy in its etheric container and physical body. And I'm reminded that when we had the I don't want to call her the Grand Sheik, is gosh, I'm having the brand given her title, Empress. When Empress showed the picture in the mind of what looked like a little man sitting in the seat, if you will, like in the pilot
that's
seat.
The anthropomorphic symbol
of, but it's actually that's what that organ looks like.
Exactly.
And so that deity enshrined therein, that's that deity enshrined therein. It says Pharaoh is made to retire into a house, thereby suggesting the attenuation of material bodily motives and outlook. With such a deliberate choice is made, liberation, meaning entry into spiritual states of consciousness, the departure of the Israelites and their arrival in the promised land, cannot occur. So, that promised land, that's things that we do. When you break it all down to the microcosm from the macrocosm, you're thinking, oh, that's a group of 40,000 people, 40 years. No, it's you. It's the evolution. It's the process that you have to go, or we have to go through individually.
Exactly.
To get to that state. With that in mind, when you talk about the first heaven, what you've written, the first heaven is going deep into the subconscious mind, to reach by way of contemplation, meditation, and study the heights of understanding its function and use to the being and its connection to the other chambers or levels of the mind. The first heaven is the great seer, the all-seeing eye, but they steal for their stuff. The subconscious mind is the place where the ancient masters and prophets refer to when they say, listen to the silent voice. Be still and know. Here is found the seat of wisdom of God and the soul of woman and man, right? The subconscious mind records and seals all thoughts, deeds, intentions, and desires of woman and man, and all which is to be done or completed in the life of the being. Thus, the subconscious mind is the infinite mind of God in woman and man. The subconscious mind imprints and holds all that is given it from the conscious mind, being subservient to the conscious mind, and governs the personality. The subconscious mind is Bey, or governor, to the sympathetic nervous system. The subconscious mind is the exalted archangel, all, the exalted spirit, the exalted moral law, and the divine spark or monad, Atman of woman and man. The subconscious mind vibrates faster than the physical body and has no counterpart within the physical form, as does the astral body. The subconscious mind connects the being to the Akashic records, etc. And so we're talking about, that's the first heaven. What you wanted to talk about. Do you want to expound on that, or you want me to go on?
No, you said enough.
So
well,
I know I said you said this, so I'm just sharing with them what you said. All right, so let me tell you about the second.
Because remember the synoptic,
right?
Because you give people basics without fluff, without the flowering.
Yeah. So the second heaven is the reasoning mind. So the subconscious mind, I think, is sort of like on autopilot. So
yes,
yeah. So now this is the reasoning mind. So you gotta participate in this a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
The second heaven is going deep into the reasoning mind to reach by way of observation and study the heights of understanding its function and use to the being and its connection to the other chambers or levels of the mind. The reasoning mind is that which is referred to as the conscience. Morality and ethical thinking are associated with the reasoning mind. Reason is derived from the Old Moorish Latin word ratio or ratus, meaning to consider. Reasoning is the power or faculty of understanding and inferring. Conscious is the moral sense or conscious within the self that determines one's considerations related to one's own conduct and is associated with right or wrong. Con means with, and science means to know. Thus, the reasoning mind is like unto a navigator. They address it accordingly. The reasoning mind is transmitted to by the subconscious mind or the spark of God, the monad, right? Thus, the exercising of the reasoning mind reflects man created in the image and likeness of God, while the conscious is strongly influenced by the cultural and life experiences of the being. Conscious is like a reflector of the consciousness to gravitate toward right action. The symbolism who's most associated with the reasoning mind is that of isonomy. Isonomy is commonly referred to as the compass and the square together.
And also referred to as the carpenter's tools.
All right.
So when you hear them use the term Jesus was a carpenter, that's what they mean.
Okay.
So with the tools, not that he's dealing with wood, he's dealing with character. continue.
Character building.
Exactly.
Wow. Y'all getting this? All right. So the third heaven is the conscious state of mind, advanced, rich with experience and ascending. The third heaven is the conscious state of mind, advanced, rich with experience and ascending to reach by way of inward study and contemplation the heights of understanding its function and used to the being, we being the being, each one of us, right? And of its accentuated connection to other quote unquote chambers or levels of the mind. The beginning of knowing and understanding the universal nature and the connectedness of the all of life, though in an advanced and ascending state relating to the conscious mind, one works at reviewing realities of the material and or mundane plane or side of life, and reviewing the realities of the spiritual and or ethereal plane or side of life. This said thought experience is transmitted by and from the subconscious mind. In the third heaven, woman, man, and child are guided by wisdom, knowledge, and understanding the moral, spiritual side of life transmitted by the first heaven or the subconscious mind of God of the universe, thus making every divine being manifest in human flesh wholly in this life on the terrestrial earth or earth plane. Lacking the scientific and correct zodiac knowledge of the first, second, and third heaven hinders woman, man, and children from ascending to the higher that is within themselves. Is it Jacob's ladder? It's in you. Got to climb it. Wow. Otherwise, in a state of ignorance, they may become stagnant, displaying a sluggish will. Therefore, they will be their own slaveholders. The subconscious mind is the point or place of reference where great philosophers, seers, mystics, poets, prophets, high priests, doctors of philosophy, doctors of law, government rulers, master masons, Eastern stars, doctors of metaphysics, psychics, astrologers, yogi, alchemists, rabbis, imams, doctors of ecclesiastical studies, sociologists, psychologists, and also some of the quote unquote lower self and negatively motivated opportunists seek, etc. Seek those who seek self for understanding self. Others are made aware of the subconscious mind or are made aware of tools for self-mastery. The sun shines on the good as well as the evil. Truth of the spirit and the workings of the mind of man is everyone's right to know. Thank you, Grand Sheik, for that. Wow, that's deep.
Now, when we were doing that lesson, we was at Brother Aleem's, and when I was about a month and a half ago, when I was talking about I wanted to see my cousin Chet and his brother Aleem, and I wrote this poem because he was Hajib at the time, and I wrote this poem in honor of him. And this, of course, this was my mother's. In this particular paper, I think they put Brother Abdullah and my sister in them because they also worked on the paper. Put 3 different poems in there, and this one was from my mother, and this one was during Brother Aleem's after he passed. And you can read that, just this last part. That's in honor of him right after he passed, so I wrote that for him.
This right here?
Yeah. And that's Brother Aleem right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brother Aleem's work as an active officer of the Great Seal National Association of Moorish Affairs. Sheik territory.
That's really what's called Jersey, New Jersey, is Sheik territory.
New Jersey territory.
Yeah.
Brother Aleem Bey Baya'el was elected to the position of Hajib by the active body of Associate Great Seal Moors in good standing by their plebiscite and votes. This election took place in the month of November 1993 AD a parliamentary meeting held at the dwelling place of Taj Tarik Bey in Sheik territory, Camden, New Jersey territory. Due to the constant work of communicating the Moorish consciousness of nationality and birthrights to Moors on a broader basis, Brother Aleem, in accord with the operative policies of the active body of Grey Seal Moors of I don't know if I'm missing something. I don't think I have it here.
Yeah.
Brother Aleem is commended. I therefore dedicate this poem to him. It fits him well. I mailed this poem along with 13 others to Brother Aleem for his review in March 1999, and I trust this poem is worthy of his memory. And it says, experience, riddled minds, opposing, poles that clash with drama every turn, knowing not the next day brings another test for tempered souls, weary still, new things to learn, some of good and some that sting, strange things, the fated duel. Matters not the times we live, nor angle, gate of birth we be. Experience become a fuel that cultivates the heart to give and blends the little ones to we. To turn a key to life's renewal, animate, mote, a work of love, source of one, yet we say pair, and each connects again the other. Distance too has not the power to mute what we may deem as fair or alter what the ancient mother, architect of life's sweet flower, brings of essence, time, and care to have the one assist the other. And is it called experience?
Mm-hmm.
It was called experience. All right. And this one is called Almond Eyes,
Mm-hmm.
which you wrote to
For my mother.
For your mother.
Mm-hmm.
Lena Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
Lena Ruth with glowing smile, smooth and comfort. Mystic Queen, bless me always with your love and caring spirit all the while. Time can make no space between, nor distance foil or come above the admiration in this heart that you have molded in your womb. Speak with love and life replies, repeating you by corporal art, depicting to genetic groom, and still I see your almond eyes. Now Shakira, born to care, strength and beauty fiery too. Amatullah, her sights share, sweet and comforting like you. Bright Hadira, kind and fair, creative, finding things to do. Ado through to do. Ado through them, new lives prepare. With all their love, I still have you. And as I travel through this life, the good, the bad, I'll take in stride. Strong I bear with bold intention, cherishing life's gift, a wife. Through seasons change. Through seasons change, I'll not let pride, nor foolish heart, nor false invention rather, cause me unkind contemplations. Soothe me now, dear mother, smile. Bless me always, mystic queen, humble son, unto your nation, family bonds and love. Tactile, royal daughters, you reprise, for time and life and love convene to manifest what you devise. Heaven to the earth replies to answer, precious almond eyes. Loving you forever with devoted, not sure, love, your son.
Mm-hmm.
Almond eyes. Well, just hear some of your poetry.
Mm-hmm.
But and there was a sister that wanted to hear that, right? So hopefully she is watching to get that. But so what would you say to anyone listening from a standpoint of what we're presenting as a self, I don't want to call it so much self-help, but a way to assist individuals in fortifying themselves in a way that they are protected, I guess I want to say.
Yes, because this is
from
what
the
it is.
onslaught, from the things
remember,
that are coming against the mind.
This is what now, as we talked past couple lessons,
mm-hmm.
we know that like some of the things that I've said last week before is taking place now.
Mm-hmm.
That's, because we're looking ahead. All right, because we already know that we operate in cycles. And also when you when you comprehend the workings of maxims, you can see even the plans of the priesthood. Even though you don't know everything exact, you can see their plans, right? Now, knowing that most people have been influenced by the dogmatic systems and not knowing they're connected to these operations, because remember, they've been trained separation of church and state.
Mhm.
And they're operating from that mentality, not knowing that that keeps them enslaved.
Right.
Now, in order to fight Rome, you've got to see the deck. You can't dismiss seeing the deck thinking it's not connected to the economic attack, because the economic attack is really a biological attack. Now, you know that the average person doesn't look at the economics as being bio. They look at it as an abstract tool for trade. It's actually attached to the bio. See, so, and this is back to even like most people don't know that husbandry is attached to agriculture. Their concept of husband is this man to you type thing, to the female. No, it's dealing with animal husbandry relative to farming and maintenance, or what you call administrative maintenance. This is why that word is given to the male for keeping his house. So people need to understand the origin of these things to understand how they really work in society. But for the most part, none of them are what people have been told.
Husbandry then, and chattel property, cattle, chattel, just
a
play of words.
The same way the Bible is a book basically dealing with agriculture, Torah, agriculture. Even when you're dealing with, remember, can be used positively or negatively. So when you're dealing with family, you're dealing with biological gardening, not unlike a plant. This is why even when they're talking about Septuaginta in the Bible, they refer to the Garden of Eden. You're still dealing with gardening. So even when you're dealing with the womb, you're dealing with gardening. Now you're dealing with bio, and then you're dealing with chemo, or chemet, i.e. alchemy, chemistry, mitochondria. You see, so the allegorical stories are based on a comprehending of the workings of the physical. Now, in order to have what you call balanced management, that's where you get the philosophies. So that's where you deal with the abstract thought on how to govern the body in order to have what balanced household. You see? So then the philosophies that are called fixed law are what you call the commandments, or rules of Ma'at. But it's all dealing with what? The monad operating in the physical plane, but yet they're all connected. So you're dealing with the seen and the unseen. And so this is also why you have what the symbol of what? Pyramid up, Trinity down, in balance, balanced. So that's what you deal with Hex Alpha, or what they refer to as Star of Dawood.
David.
But you know that the priesthood can also use that knowledge to the negative. Why? Because the power that they have over the people is the fact that the people don't know what these symbols really mean. If you get the point. So the priesthood tell them it means one thing, and it is dealing with the priesthood controlling the people rather than letting them know that these symbols are actually operations of life, of the monad spark on the throne, and you take the M and the N and you switch them. So the monad becomes nomad. So now in the physical body, you become the nomad. But this is where you get the term traveling man. There you go. on the earth plane. And also you'll see symbolically where they'll have the three kings on the backs of camels, and they'll have the crescent and the star governing the womb, mother and son, right? And then they'll have pyramid in the background. That's what that symbol simply represents, travelers. And then they do what? Guide themselves by the cosmos, by the stars. And so they'll tell you, you know, Jesus in the manger, and three kings went searching for his birth and to the manger and all that stuff. That's all it means. They're just master astrologers traveling, searching for the Christ. And it's not really, it's themselves to bring gifts of life. Now but that's allegorical. So these are stories of the traveling of humanity, but for children, they give it images. So this is where the Jesus comes from. But there really isn't what they think it is. It's all internal. So the mastering that, so this is one of the keys of the priesthood ruling or misruling the masses, is they don't tell them the origin of these things. And so these people take everything literal, and then they can break it up and then have people actually fighting each other based on their misunderstandings that was given by design. And so now the priesthood down the street, they don't compete with your turf. So make sure they don't, they fill my pockets, and then you got that club over there filling your pockets. And in secret, they're all Masons and Eastern Stars, all got feathers in secret, and know that the fez symbolizes the universe. Oh, and it's also called the crown of the sun. This is why a lot of people who begin to really understand this look at these things as negative, and it's not those things that are negatives, it's people's misuse of them. So when people look at masonry, they think it's like a club, and masonry is just short for mother and son, ma and son, and that's all that's there. And so that's symbolized as what they call Esau, Jesus, Isis. And what is it? It's a symbol of mother with son on her lap, sucking her breast. That's ma, son, and the study is Re. Re means study. So as you can see, because of the corruption of the priesthood, different things that were actually developed for human evolution and human development have actually been given to the masses a negative connotation, when in fact it was for liberating humanity, and the priesthood has corrupted everything. Therefore, Monad Master. It's another reason why you're sharing what you're sharing, because it's liberating people. Because it's giving them the basic Kabbalistic, Gnostic principles without the dogma.
Yeah, what does it really
And so what does it do? It empowers people, because what? It's taking your power back, because now you're no longer looking for these things outside yourself.
You're not looking for a savior, external savior.
Exactly.
You must save yourself. You must save and preserve your own.
And you don't have to, go through 10 years of philosophical study and pay priesthood thousands of notes and stuff like that. And so therefore, Yahshua come, or Jesus come to what? To get the money changers out of the way.
The tables of the money changers.
Yep. And it's not that they didn't understand. They knew it too. They just corrupted. And so that's why he's called the Savior. He's the what? The liberator. He was a liberator. And so Rome killed him. You get the point? So they hung him on the cross. You see? That's why even the tradition of hanging Yahshua on the cross, so all the bloodline of the Moabites, this is where the hybrid European get the tradition of hanging the Moors of the Western Hemisphere and feeding their children on Sundays to the alligators in Florida. That's been a Christian ritual here in North America, even up into the 20s. They used to, on Sunday, feed children to the alligators in the swamps. That's where you have the Seminole Wars, Gullah Wars, and the Elise Wars. Yeah, that's where that traditional that battles come from. They refer to them as the Elise Moors.
Let me see the comments.
As a matter of fact, in Philadelphia, Sister Rashida, Sayaraha, she has one of her blankets, because she makes dolls and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go see her and bring some of the dolls that she made here, because I used to make some of the frames for her to make her dolls with. And she has one of her blankets are in a museum, and that's depicting where the Europeans was feeding our babies to the alligators. And that's been a Constantine, or what you call a Christian ritual, up into even as far as late 20s here. They used to feed our babies to the alligators in Florida. And this is one of the reasons, as they took over the land of flowers, why that's presented for the hybrid Europeans as one of their major, what you call land of flowers. They call it the land of milk and honey, stuff like that. Florida. What do they call it? The fountain of youth. It's Florida. And right now, most of your wealthy hybrid Europeans have retirement homes in Florida.
But they get those storms and all.
Florida and Khalifa's land. Those two places are the main places that's called their crown jewels. So again, and it's back to it's sort of like, if people are under the dogma mind, right, not knowing this, they don't have the courage to fight Rome because they're under the mental molding. Because remember, in their mind, these things are separate. But once you know they're not separate, and then you give them the monad master principles without the dogma, and they will baptize their own mind, and then they recognize that they're brave. Then they're thinking common sense, and the answers are already with them. It's only buried under their dogma systems. That really is not theirs. It was given to them by the priesthood. Thus, once you get back to the principle, how like the Bible says, go back to that state of mind, like Durali says, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers. That's Durali, right? Bible says, in the book of Malachi, I think 3rd chapter, last book of the Old Testament, turn your hearts back to your ancient mothers and fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Same principle. So once you go back to them ancient principles, absent of the dogma, these people who have been intimidated by Rome and are really subdued by themselves because they think that the system has power over them, they will dismiss it and recognize that Rome put their power in you by mental, and the chains are mental. It's mental slavery, mental servitude. You dump that and render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, give that crap back to them, and Mother Nature gives you your cure because it's already in you. And one of the things that's got them upset, that people are waking up. See, because as the people wake up, they lose their power. Because remember, their power is by virtue that we keep giving it to them, because we think they're what? Our government, don't we?
Yeah.
The government. The is positive, isn't it? Huh? Positive participle, right? Huh. So remove the and recognize that they're a simple corrupt corporation that has deluded the whole world, that they are what? This exceptional people, exceptional government. And you recognize that what? They're an organized body of demons. that have been going to and fro the earth, devouring nations. And so what we must do is what? Stop assisting them. Step back. They want to go start a war, step back. You don't play the red tails for them. You get the point? You don't play buffalo soldiers for them. That's another reason why we've suffered, because what? All the Rome's wars that Rome has waged on the planet, who has won them for them? These Aboriginal people that keep fighting their wars. Rome has won no wars without us. What did Hitler say to Churchill? If y'all didn't have them stovepipes in the war, we'd kick your ass. That's Hitler to Churchill. Do the research, y'all. Who's them stovepipes? Them Moors that think they black. You stop serving Rome, Rome loses power. Stop believing in them, Rome loses their power. They need you to believe in them and their dogma system is what keeps you mentally subdued in order for them to rape you and rape your estate. So when they present a claim on you, you don't contest it. Why? Because you assume that they are your parentus, they're your mother, they're your government. Therefore, they have right to your estate before you do. This is why people don't fight. So now that you've cleared the weeds out of their mind, Mother Nature takes them from there, and common sense tells you. And like we said earlier, if somebody's suffering what? A foreclosure, they start thinking for means before, right?
Right.
And close, that means to shut down or to conclude. So if you went to a closing, how can you later have a foreclosure? That's backwards. Common sense, doesn't it? So now an adverse claim in law simply means a rebuttal. They don't rebut. They start trying to what? Pay. It can't be paid. Why? Because you can't service a debt with a fiat currency. That's established law. It's not opinion, established law. So now protocols become obvious, doesn't it? So if you don't speak up, they're saying you're abandoning your estate. So if you make no rebuttal, that means there's no adverse claim on the table. So if someone comes with a claim, they write it up. You're not looking at, they can say, what do they have to do with this? What do some bank have to do with you working your butt off and giving fiat to so-called buy a house and you're listed as a tenant? So that means it's foreclosed from the beginning. So there's a fraud, isn't it? Isn't it? Now, of course, you already know, a couple of years ago, we did adverse claim. We'll maybe do that next time. We'll go into adverse claim, show people how to argue. Keep it simple. No different than what? Well, 7 or 8 years ago when I showed the letter from Rick to the IRS, and then they wrote back, we agree that you're not liable to the tax. Why? It's because what we wrote. It's because understanding what your relationship is. It's understanding who they are and who they are not, who you are and who you are not, and speaking up. See, because remember, to speak up, let's keep this clear for everyone. A rebuttal is called an adverse claim. So understand, rebutting and adverse claim is the same thing. You're just simply talking about estates relative to a statement. And this is, again, why they don't teach jurisprudence. And so the deal is what they do. This is why whenever there's a threat of rebuttal in a foreclosure, they'll tell you, oh, go get a lawyer. Now they just advise you, then you go get a lawyer. Now you just gave up your birthright because you assumed that he was there to step for your right, which means you're incompetent because you don't need another man to speak for your right. You see the point? So they've convinced you that you have no power. You see the point? So an adverse claim is, so that letter that Rick, as an example, sent to the IRS when he was making a claim on his house in Florida and making a claim on his private accounts, seizing his accounts and everything.
We have that on the flash drive, though.
Huh?
I think we have it on the flash drive.
No, it's not on flash drive.
It's not on the USB drive?
that might be in.
I think they might.
That
be.
is, yeah, in the thing.
There's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
USB drive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That I think in the files to James or files to Delilah, when you go into them files. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But the deal of it is that's called an adverse claim. Now, relative to the sister from Australia.
Now here,
this is the
let me
nature.
just say this too about what she said to me. She said to me there was no rebuttal. So after they were at court, and then
if there's no rebuttal, that means
there was nobody gave anybody a time. So now all of a sudden they get a letter saying
that. Now she can do an adverse claim immediately, in written form. Send it to both those who are rebutting, both to the governor of the territory. Because remember, this is how it operates. Because remember, Australia is not under the authority. It's by fact what you call land of occupation. They're under occupation just like we are here, right? However, in international law, so you want to send a rebuttal to the Hague or to the Court of International Court of Justice, right? ICU. Send one to the governor of the territory and the mayor, because the structures, they would have different systems, but the structure would be relative to the same because they're Western countries. So therefore, they would still be under fundamental structure of Roman rule, which was adopted from the Moabites. So that the fundamental principles were actually adopted from Moorish law. Keep that in mind. Under what they call to be born again. To be born again is called the Renaissance. So the fundamental jurisprudence that was brought to Europeans by the Moors is called the Renaissance. The term for the Renaissance for the European is called to be born again. So most Europeans are born again. That means they're coming into civilization. So the jurisprudence didn't come from them. It came from your forefathers. However, they keep corrupting it and dishonoring it. That's what your battle is with them. So if you understand those principles, basically what I just said, you understand that all so-called Occidental nations have a form of jurisprudence coming from what they will term Roman law when it's actually Moorish law. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They're taking credit for it. However, so whenever there's a claim against an estate, the counter move or the balance always is an heirship issue. Therefore, an heir must speak up. So if an heir doesn't speak up or someone does not introduce rebuttal or adverse claim, they proceed with abandonment of estate. That's why most foreclosures, when you see the filing, it'll say abandonment. They're arguing with you about lack of payment. The documents will say abandonment. And their threat to sell would be what you call a fiduciary statement threatening to sell the deed of trust, quote unquote, deed of trust. Keep that in mind. So that means you have a fiduciary action. But they're not telling you that when their action comes up, automatically, by proper procedure, an adverse claim or rebuttal. And what happens is 9 times out of 10, no one steps up and rebuts. Because you don't know rebut. They got you thinking payment. You can't pay, you can't service a debt with a fiat. This is why they don't teach, again, civics. So I'm keeping it basic because it becomes obvious what your argument is. Mere rebuttal, i.e. called adverse claim. Do research in that area and make an adverse claim on paper and talk and make reference not to the house, to the latitude and the longitude of the land. Not only the consanguinity, but to the land. Now, remember, the lot number would be their tax number to Rome. So the address to the place belongs to Rome. Remember, the address don't belong to you. If you say my address, then you accepted the deed. Never refer to it as your address. And remember, a deed is a sharecropping contractual agreement. It is not an allodial title. This is why we always tell people, whenever you're dealing with stewardship in a house and you're dealing with any what you call occidental governmental body, always do immediately a quit claim deed and then convert the quit claim deed into an allodial title, which was already in place before 1913. So before 1913, they were all allodial titles. As they began to take over Aboriginal lands, they converted the right of estate of the Aboriginal people into mortgages and deeds. They are sharecropping contracts. This is why all the people are listed as tenants, which is why, and you know, we're talking about common sense, right, Dr. G?
Mm-hmm.
How is it you got this silver or platinum watch and this diamond ring here and this gold ring here, and as long as you have this, you're paying taxes on it every year, or they take it? At what point does common sense tell you that that's not an action that indicates ownership? And then people will say they own a house. Now, of course, now you're going to go to what? The war tax unlawfully put on people's properties, and you didn't rebut that either. See what we need to talk about, Dr. G? So next time we might talk about the War Tax Act and the fraud of it.
One thing I noticed lately on a lot of the TikTok videos that are coming up, there's a lot of modern Europeans that are saying the exact same thing. So we realize
that we've been saying for 40 years.
And they're doing the same thing about the mortgages, the taxes, and all that.
Why? Because they've dissolved the middle class, and they can't no longer blame the Mexicans or somebody coming across the border taking their jobs. They ran out of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And talking about whatever qualifications they had, and they're being prejudiced against quote unquote right people type stuff. And so the deal with it is now that the middle class has clearly, not vaguely, been dissolved, they got to start telling the truth, because they knew it all the time. See, the information wasn't supposed to be with us. That's why they kept separate schools. People, they were told people, you know, through the dogma systems, well, we've got to learn to like everyone, and doesn't matter what color you are, whether you're green or purple or pinstripe, and everybody, you know, they talk the game like that. And of course, that's a fiction. All these labels were fiction anyway. And the real deal is that's kept people arguing the wrong argument, when the reality is that the bottom argument would have been right of estate. So people not paying attention to, they were actually stealing our estates. And then they created a dead pledge system that we would have to go through the Bar Association, the British Registry, to make the reclaim. And we're thinking about payments, and you're dealing with a fiduciary of fofers that are really dealing with trust that they created, Sister QV Trust, and been acting as trustees, and you're arguing with them about payments when the issue is a trusteeship. And then the nom de guerre or the wardship would automatically deem the person as being what? Incompetent. So now you don't have an heir that would speak up for adverse claim, because a nom de guerre can't be an heir. You see how these pieces are put in place, Dr. G, mm-hmm. that are actually roadblocks, but once you get past them, you can actually see the chessboard. But most people, because they're locked up in belief systems, they can't see. It's not that it's not there. They can't see because they're blocked with their beliefs. And this is back to where the information that you share removes the dogma.
Yeah.
And once you remove the dogma, common sense is before your face. It was always there. It was beneath your feet all the time, that even a child could see it. What blinds adults is the belief systems that lock out common sense, thus blind faith. And from blind faith, have a what? Fiat system lives. That's why they can't tell. That's why they could convince people that digits is a physical piece. That's why they can tell something that doesn't exist, a coin. And actually people are investing in it.
A Bitcoin.
No, and a bit means a piece.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go through the coin thing. It's obvious. And look how many people are buried in it. Now, what have they done? They've made people drain the bookkeeping instruments that actually are physical representations of their labor energy output. Even though it's a fiat, it's indicative of their energy output. It's really a bookkeeping system. But now they have nothing. So they have no claim. Now with the digit, all of a sudden, oh, just like right now, what's going on right now? They know the system is broken. So what did? They released people's social security numbers, over 3 billion of them, which includes every man, woman, and child in North America, and got all your personal information on the dark web. And they're actually selling people's social security number and their history of everything they bought, sold, all alleged debts. And I think they even have some of the stuff for sale for $3 million. They're selling people's social security right now as I'm speaking on the web. But we already knew they were going to do this kind of stuff, because this is what it is. They're being pulled down because the nation stopped buying the U.S. Treasury bonds. So they want to take the people down with them. This is why you got to be aware. This is why you got, and this is back to what, as we were talking before, it's dangerous for us to ignore the reality, because what we need to be about right now is holding on to survive this thing while they're making this major attack, because many people won't survive it. Really, because it's a biological attack through economics as the weapon. And people think they're separate. So it means they're not going to do certain things to protect themselves. This is why we tell people for the last 10 years, take your fiat out the bank. Why? Because we already know they're going to they're closing these accounts because they're bailing it. They're not going to, they're doing it right now. And as the masses, let's look at this. Berkshire Hathaway is an example, right? So that's Warren Buffett, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So most investors serious investors will look at what he's doing and usually, although they're late, try to follow up, right? So we told people last year that he was selling all his stock. So anybody that know that they're going to be what? A commercial property bubble. All Airbnbs and stuff like that is going down. Meaning Airbnbs, everybody invested in Airbnbs from last year to this year, they're out of business or they're underwater. Anybody bought any property, remember what I was saying?
Mm-hmm.
They're underwater. And what they got then and then invested there, that's done. And they're going to be out of that and be in debt. Now, anybody got an Airbnb? They're underwater right now. Tell you already. Anybody bought a new vehicle? Last couple of years, you're underwater, and you're going to be in debt. Now, anybody that didn't get their fiat out the bank, they're going to take it, right? And when you go get it, the building's going to be closed. Then you're going to go to ATMs. You're going to have to go to 3 or 4 of them to get a little bit of stuff that used to just get a couple of years ago, just like that. You just walk up to them. You're going to have to go 3 or 4 of them, and 3 out of 4 ain't going to work. Then later on, none of them going to work. And then when you start to make calls, you're going to get some AI on the phone from India that you can't half understand. And then they're going to tell you when you discover your stuff's going, they're going to say, oh, someone hacked your account. You know that we've had a glitch, and you know they hacked the system and they did it. But anyway, it is what it is.
Wow.
But back to the issue of foreclosure. Whenever there's a foreclosure, just like when you have a coin, if you have a coin, if there's a front, there's a back, right, Dr. J?
Mm-hmm.
If there's a foreclosure, there's an adverse claim. So someone presents the foreclosure. Who's presenting the adverse claim? Keep that in your mind, and keep in mind, don't abandon your right to adverse claim.
Somebody says that the WHO just announced the minky pox, or do they mean the monkey pox? Wait,
Yo, the new
whatever.
You're gonna come up with something.
Yeah, we sending out a an energetic vaccination now. Just take that.
Because it's
in your mind.
It's baptizing the mind.
That's right. So we sending out the vaccine right now against the minky, monkey, whatever, funky, whatever it is. They might
remember it's always the monkey. Because remember in the Wizard of Oz, what's the nemesis?
The monkey, the flying monkey. That's right.
And then when you go into the Yucatan and you go to the great experiments of Yakub, where you're dealing with Anthropopithecus, Pangidae, troglodyte nigger,
the monkey
that made the Rome man called Red Man.
Yeah.
And also referred to as what? Modern man. Also referred to as Occidental hybrid. None of this stuff is secret. Go in your Oxford Dictionary pre-1960. And these two, you're going to look it up. And the hybrid will tell on themselves. Look up hybrid, then look up troglodyte nigger, which is a scientific name for the Anthropopithecus. Look up Pangidae, and then look down in your linear entries of heterogeneous hybrid, and you'll see about entry 8. This is your older Oxford, not in your modern, in your older Oxford. And it says, we English men at best are but heterogeneous hybrids. But you're not going to find that in your later dictionaries. So it's not like they ain't telling you. That's why they use the Anthropopithecus in the Wizard of Oz. Wicked Witch of the West, you got the West and the East. The good witch and the bad witch, so they're both matriarchs. So you got the Amazonian, the red Amazonians, and the Moabites. And so in the political realm now, you have your competition is called the Daughters of the American Revolution, of which Hillary Clinton is a member. So now you understand the Democratic Party. So things that you think aren't connected are absolutely connected. That's in your political realm. And they've been doing what? Breaking up your families, and y'all looking about supporting them.
Listen, we are running out of time, but what we want to do is next week is I didn't do a banner, but next week, y'all, we have it's for Friday. And we hope to see you all out. Those of you who can come to the House of Reawakening Minds.
So make sure you put a reminder so they don't forget.
Well, it's next Friday.
Yeah.
Let me see. Right here. Okay. It's running underneath here. Our fourth Friday in person class at House of Reawakening Minds, 602 Vanderbilt Avenue, Wilmington, Delaware. Doors open at 6:30, and we're there from 7 p.m. until, right?
Yep.
I say until because I never know.
It always happens that way, don't it?
Yeah. So those of you who want to meet Grand Sheik and myself up close and personal, we're there. Hopefully I'll be there. I wasn't there the last week and the last time, and hope I'll be there. But Grand Sheik will be there. He'll definitely be there next Friday. Hopefully you all will come out. Those of you who do, we would love to see your face in the place. And it's really good. When we're in those settings, we can be more open and forthright with the things that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
We also talked about doing Unfiltered.
Mhm.
And the way we're going to do the announcement, so you all will get the link for the Unfiltered. I'm going to do a link just the way we usually do this. It'll look like a broadcast for YouTube, but you're going to have to go into the description and click the link to enter into the Unfiltered side. That's how we're doing right now until we get the website situation straightened out. And we can't put the link there, but we can definitely, it'll be like a YouTube link, and you'll just have to go into the description and you'll have the Unfiltered link to click, because we're not going to actually have a presentation on YouTube. We just want that to be the vehicle by which you'll be able to get to the Unfiltered. You're not going to have to pre-register. You're just going to have to click the link. We'll let you know when that's coming up. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the first Friday, or if not the third Friday of next month. Yeah. So I think that's about that. I think that's about it.
Anyway, hope we did some good, y'all.
Yeah. We hope that what we talked about today
help somebody.
Oh, here's something. Let me pull this up. She said, got to my bank today and the sign was in the window saying closed for some unforeseen reason. Bank. Yeah, well, guess it's the start of it. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
no surprise.
Well. All right. Again, like I said, we sending you positive vaccinations against all of the infiltration of
all the negative psychic attacks.
Anybody who tries to govern your mental, make you believe in all of this stuff, we send you.
Govern yourself.
Govern yourself.
Monad, become your own master.
Yeah. Yep.
And you know another way that Yahshua would say it?
Is that?
To liberate the people. He would just say, ye all are gods.
True.
That means monad master.
Right.
That means you're not going to search. It is within yourself.
Yeah.
And in the Koran, like what Raleigh says, relative to dirty priesthood, he says when the people begin to know, they would go to the altar and place their own hand in Allah's hand. Translation: remove the middleman.
And yeah, you don't need that. So again, we thank you. We appreciate your support. Again, we only have PayPal right now, just to remind you. No Cash App. They shut down our Cash App. Don't know why. So
you know why.
Yeah, well, they won't tell us why. But anyway, we do have PayPal. So we thank you for your support. We thank you for the actually, I realized really what has been sustaining us has been USB drives. I'm sure it has been the purchase mainly of USB drives over the years. So we appreciate those of you who have ordered and continue to order USB drives. Hopefully I'll do an update on it soon so we can say, oh yeah, get a new one. But right now, if you've gotten one in the last couple of years, you don't need to buy a new one. But if you've never gotten one, we a lot of the things that Grand Sheik talks about. It's on there. Things that I've purchased that those things you see, you're like, I wish I could pay that, but I don't want to get that, but I don't want to pay that. I may have put it already on the flash drive for you. Survival information and
because it's really all about survival.
Survival.
Really, because remember the knowledge.
Right.
See, because people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge.
True.
The knowledge is the tool.
Right.
Because ultimately people have to liberate themselves. You know how they say, you can make someone a fish sandwich, but you can't fish for them the rest of their life.
True. Yes. Thank you so much. So thank you so much, Rob Ali. So much more worth than the cost. We appreciate that. If you have not gotten your USB drive, please get one, because there's a lot of information on that. Can you do an adverse claim on a house for sale? Can you do an adverse claim?
You make an adverse claim to all claimants and to the venue that they're, because remember, look at this. Keep this in mind. In the Occidental jurisdictions, so the Occidental jurisdictions, they will refer to as Western nations. So the Western, what they refer to, when you hear the term Western, they're referring to the Occidental jurisdictions. So it doesn't matter what side of the water it's on. So they're talking about Britain, Germany, France, US, Canada, Australia. They were Occidental jurisdictions. They refer to themselves as Western. Doesn't mean territorial in the sense that people think it is. Reason they refer to West because the British, i.e., Anglo-Saxon, took over the last vestige of the Asiatics of the Western Hemisphere, or we refer to as the Moorish Empire, with the last vestige being Ottoman. That's the last vestige. And then they made the Balfour Agreement and all that other stuff, and they started dividing up all the Aboriginal lands among themselves. So keep in mind, every structure that they have when they're dealing with claim on land, it would be chancery courts.
Yeah.
So remember, this comes from the Circle Church and Chancery.
Mhm.
See, so what happens is that it's not enough of our people are arguing that they're Aboriginal and then they don't make adverse claim. It's almost like making a claim and then not taking a stand of what that claim represents. And this is unfortunate, but that's the reality. You'll see people arguing about whether they're Aboriginal or not, and then they don't operate in the venue that's already there for them. So no one speaks up. They arguing about whether they're really Aboriginal or not, and who ain't, and who is, and who's really part of the club, and all this stuff, and no one's making adverse claims. So it's abandonment. That's why go look at clerk's records and all your so-called those city operations, and you'll see all foreclosures. 90% of them are referred to as abandonment. As a matter of fact, what they will do, they'll send representatives out to spots, and they'll put a paper on the door that will talk about abandonment, and no one takes it off and then makes an adverse claim because people don't think they have a right to do that. They don't know to do that. And therefore, they've abandoned their opportunity to rebut. That's called adverse claim. So focus on adverse claim.
Okay.
And don't let them distract you and other stuff. They're not expecting you to do that.
If paying a mortgage, last question. If paying a mortgage, can you do adverse claim?
Remember, yes, you could do it anyway. But then what you want to do, these things I want you to do. Look up war tax, right? The War Tax Act, and then also deal with constitutional principle and make an adverse claim. Because remember, also whenever there's a so-called mortgage payment, that's a misstatement. That's a fraudulent statement, because no debt can be. Also look on the flash drive and look at U.S. bankruptcy with James Traficant, and look what's being said on the House of the House of Representatives. No debt can be satisfied or serviced with a fiat currency. Now, remember, that's established. And when you do the research, you'll see that all the alleged payments are accepted as dedonis, as gifts. Why? They're gifts because they're not payments. Because remember, every transaction that takes place in the mortgage agreement is a set off or discharge. Keep that in mind.
Let me see. This is the last I'm going to respond to. Ellie Fancier. Been trying to get a USB flash drive and treat it. You see that flowing across the screen right now? Text USB to 302-345-0500, and you'll get the link, and you can get the USB drive. That's the only way you can get it, or come in person. If you get them in person, they're five notes cheaper than when you order them online. So there's the information. We got to go, y'all. We appreciate each and every one of you. And I'll be back soon. Look, I haven't been doing my office hours with Dr. G. They think I've been on hiatus. But
you've been getting a half rest, and still ain't been getting a rest.
Tired. Yeah, y'all. I've been tired.
And you got to take care.
I gotta sign up some.
Look how much work we still got to do here. And I didn't even have time to come here and do work that we still got to do here.
Don't text me on Telegram. I very seldom look at Telegram. That's why you haven't gotten a response. Text that number that's on the screen, 302-345-0500. That's how you're going to get it. Okay? That's the best way. I'm just telling you. And, yeah. Hope to see y'all next week. Hope to see
Islam. Assalamu alaikum.
All of that.
Shalom. Vadimekum. Bonabot.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store